Hey everybody, and I'm here to talk about 8 months on a short TBR. Now, I've not planned out anything for this video. This is going to be just a casual little bit of a chat between me and the camera about my experience with a short TBR. I don't know what points I will be bringing up. I have structured nothing, so this might be chaos. I assume this is going to be relatively short, but who knows. So, for those of you who are new to my channel, I got a 0 TBR at the end of 2024. However, it was also a little bit of a fake TBR, but so, a fake 0 TBR, let me clarify that. So I had basically been doing this project called Every Book All at Once for the final half of 2024, in which I was basically reading all of the books that I had on my TBR at the same time, because I felt like my TBR was getting out of hand again. I had a 0 TBR since a year at that point in time. Like, I had a 0 TBR a year prior to that point, and my TBR had again grown to be like 18 books or maybe even more, with more books incoming, and I once again felt a little bit overwhelmed by having accumulated that amount of books again. And it's not necessarily the accumulation of books. 18 books is still not a massive amount, but it was that feeling of like running behind, of always having to catch up to my past purchases. And so I decided to do this Every Book All at Once project in order to kind of make a new cleanse and try and read them all at once until they were all done. And while initially I had seen this as a somewhat smaller project, books kept showing up. You know, I do have book subscriptions and stuff like that, so books kept showing up, and in the end it just kept on accumulating until I had this project running until the end of 2024. And even then, the reason why I say it was a fake 0 TBR at the end of 2024 was because there were some books that I had excluded from the Every Book All at Once project that I did go into 2025, which were then like the there was this Dandelion Dynasty set that arrived in September that I'd forgotten about, that was gonna arrive then, that I was like, I cannot put this into this project or I will never be able to finish this project. And then there were the books that I was gifted, of course, in the month of December as well. So in the end, 2025, I started with 12 books on the TBR, and I have to say that my intention for my 0 TBR has still not been able to happen up until this point, because my kind of vision of what my future reading life was going to be like was that I would get the 0 TBR and then I would just like buy 5 books, read those 5, buy 5 more, read those 5, and just have that be the new dynamic, where I would always buy like a very small set of books, read those, and then feel like, okay, what are the 5 books that I want to be reading right now? And I still haven't managed to do that. I do still kind of wish to do that at some point, but I also don't necessarily want to be chasing the 0 at this point in time. At this point in time, I'm just trying to keep it low, because as indicated, I started the year with 12, but it did climb up again throughout the year at times, and at some point I think it was even at like 18, I want to say, is probably when it was at its highest, when I was once again starting to feel like, whoa, we need to like put some intention here, we need to prioritize some of these books, because, you know, like I ideally I want to reduce this TBR, you know. Ideally I want it to be lower. My ideal number that I'd kind of been going at was under 10, because that ideal scenario actually had only 5 in them, and so I am still in the process of kind of dwindling down my TBR, but I'm also not at that stage anymore where I want, like, where I'm constantly thinking like I cannot buy anything. Sure, I will be always aware when I'm considering buying a book that buying that book is gonna add a number to the TBR. And so when I'm picking up a book nowadays, it is either because I know I want to be reading it soon, or it is a subscription book. And that is I think that the subscription books are the big hurdle here when it comes to reducing my TBR. And that is to some extent still a lie, because it's not like I get that many Illumicrate books, but the broken binding is more of an issue, I guess. But the good thing is that I have now skipped the books that will be coming in the month of November and December for the Broken Binding, but I have also joined another Broken Binding subscription, so that is another potential book that can add on to the TBR. And so while I like these subscription books and I love these editions, and special editions of book is another big weakness because that also sees books added to the TBR, it is always like a potential for books to be coming in from that, and I do not control the timing of those. I guess that is my main sort of like hurdle with the subscription books, is that, you know, we make a decision on those at some point, but then it is like it's a future thing, you know, like for the Illumicrate book you have to decide before the first of the month whether you want that month's book. That month's book is going to show up either at the end of the next month or the beginning of the month after that. So it is to some extent a little bit, it's not as tangible as when you are deciding to buy a book and because you're in the bookstore and it immediately comes home with you. You know, it's like, it's future Cleo's problem. It's always like, by that time I will have read these and these and these books, so it should be fine, right? And so there's less control of the number on the TBR, and at the moment in time in which these books then do appear, occasionally it will be more of an issue that they have appeared. But so that is to show you guys that a small TBR doesn't solve these problems of books coming in versus books going out. You can have a small TBR and still have these same concerns that I see a lot of people with massive TBRs have. I guess the big saving grace here is that the reason why this is quite prominent in my mind is because my main concern is avoiding it getting to an uncontrollable amount again. In principle, it will be fine if the TBR climbs again to like 30 at some point or another. I know I can tackle that. The main thing is that I don't want it to get to that number anymore. I don't want to get to a point where if I want to tackle it, it's gonna be a massive project. So currently I am still very much in my mind busy with comparing what comes in versus what goes out, keeping a track of the number of books on my TBR, specifically to avoid returning to a past point that I was not happy with. So if I were to not think about that future, that potential future of my book purchases slipping again, I would probably be quite happy with the number that I'm at currently. And I am happy with the number that I'm at currently, actually. I should clarify that. That was a bad way of putting it, but I could stop thinking about this and be happy with my reading and my reading dynamics for the upcoming few months before it would actually become a problem. But I guess I'm just trying to show that, you know, like if you have a massive TBR and you're thinking like a small TBR, like a reset is gonna automatically solve all of my issues, what I'm trying to get at is that a reset will not necessarily solve your issues. I mean, you can go different directions here, of course. A reset is a new clean slate and you can decide what to do with that. You can either decide to go back to your old ways and just let it build again and then tackle it again, or you can, like me, put in some measures, some controlling body, which is myself, to then try and ensure that you don't get back to that same type of level. But it isn't like the clean slate is like the ideal, you know. I don't live in a dream world now where I don't think about the TBR and how much is on there and how much I'm reading from it. It is still front and center of my mind, and I think that if you are asking those questions about yourself at a big TBR, you'll probably also ask those questions for yourself at a smaller TBR. It'll just be a case for yourself to decide whether it is worthwhile keeping it small or whether you are happy letting it build again. So yes, this was like a very big tangent that actually probably was not of interest to anybody, but that's just what I kind of wanted to express here, is that the way that I've been living throughout the past few months has definitely been embracing the freedom of picking up a book, freedom of being like, oh yeah, I see this one book lying around, I really want to get it, and just being able to buy it and knowing that it will not put a big damper on my TBR. It will not make my TBR unmanageable to pick up a book now without really having any future for it. But what I do see myself, and that comes from having gone through a zero TBR process twice now, is that I am more inclined to now take into account when I will be reading this book. Like, when am I gonna get to it? Is this something that I can put on the TBR this month still? Is it something that I can put on the TBR next month? Sure, then I'll buy it. Is this a book that I kind of want, but I don't really see myself reading in the first 2 or 3 months? Then, unless it's like a special edition, then why get it now? You know, it's just gonna accumulate on the TBR, and within 6 months I'm gonna start feeling bad about the fact that it's lingering, because that's also what my zero TBR was mainly motivated by. The main motivation for me for the zero TBR was that feeling of books lingering around on the shelves and my excitement for them dropping. You know, the moment you buy a book, you're like super excited for the idea of this book. And that still can mean that if you had the opportunity to immediately start reading it, you might not want to, you might not be in the mood to read that book in that particular moment, but still your excitement is there for it. It is fresh, it is new, it is something that you would like to pick up soon. And so I found that my motivation for picking up books on my TBR when the TBR was bigger was more motivated out of a sense of, oh, this book has been on my TBR for too long, I need to get around to it at some point, which meant that I was prioritizing the books that I was not as excited about anymore at that point in time versus some other books that I might have just gotten. And so the whole idea for me in reducing my TBR was like, if I just have a small number on the TBR, then everything on there is going to be new, fresh, exciting. I'm going to want to pick it up the moment that I get it. And that is what I do love about my new TBR number, is that many times I have picked up a book right after buying it or within the first month of having purchased it. And I love that. I love that I'm able to do that, and that now I don't have to then feel like, oh, but all of those other books that I've been carrying around for a while now, they really do need to get read. But even with that being said, it do still have a little bit of that guilt towards some books that are lingering for months. Because they're also books that when I bought them, I wanted to get to them straight away, you know? And that is more to do, I guess, with sort of like buddy reads, readathons and stuff like that sometimes push things to the front that you don't want to push to the front. And that's, yeah, that is something for me to explore, I guess, whether that should mean that I take part in less of these. Because I do love readathons and I love the potential for it to push something to the front of my TBR, but at the same time I'm then also less happy about the fact that there is this book, The Ashfire King, the sequel to the Stardust Thief, which I waited for that book for such a long time to come out. It came out in April. We are September. I still haven't found the time to reread the first one in order to get to this sequel. How? How do I have a TBR of under 20 books and still it has not happened? So yeah, I think I'll I think I will keep battling the same sort of things. I will keep having that sort of like inner fight between the books that are on there longer versus the ones that are on there just now. However, the numbers are so much smaller that you know, the ones that are on there the longest, they are on there less than a year. I have one book on there now that is still from 2024, and that is because of that same reason. It is a sequel to a book for which I have to reread the first book first in order to be able to read it. It is now scheduled, it will happen in November. And most of my books, most of the TBR is under 3 months at this point in time. And I love that. I love looking at that and seeing how quickly I'm getting around to the books that I'm purchasing. But like, if there's one thing that I really do still struggle with, it's what I said before. It is those subscription books. It is those subscriptions books and that feeling of having to make a decision at that point in time or missing out. And that has made me choose sometimes when I could have easily, like if I had seen those books in bookstore in a regular edition, for a lot of those I would have just been like, yeah, no, not now. But it's the special edition, you know, it's the aesthetics. I'm so sold by the aesthetics, and so that actually makes me think that I need to put the the smart thing to do would be to skip the November sci-fi and fantasy subscription for The Broken Binding. Because sure, it's a book that I'm like, I mean, we don't for sure know the book yet, but there's speculation and it's probably going to be that book. And I'm like, yes, I've read a series by that author. I love that series. Yes, I want to read more from that author. So sure, send me a book by this author in this beautiful, gorgeous edition, and hopefully I will love it. But on the other hand, like if I knew that this book was coming, out in November, and the only option for me was to pick up a normal edition of it, or even to just buy like a special edition that was not part of the subscription service that I pay for, then I probably would be able to say like, no, I don't need to read this immediately. So subscription services are ruining my life a little bit when it comes to the TBR. Like I would have a much easier time, I think, at keeping my TBR small if I didn't have these subscription services. And so this is potentially something that I really need to have a think on. I think I should evaluate the fantasy subscription for The Broken Binding, especially now that they have the SFF subscription, because the SFF subscription is like a subscription for new release books, whereas the other one is for entire series and their older series. And I think I'm more excited about the new release subscription. You can also skip a lot of times within that subscription, whereas the fantasy one you can only skip one series per year. So you will still get like 9 books per year from the fantasy subscription compared to the SFF. So yeah, I think that should be my conclusion, right? I am skipping the final series of the fantasy subscription for this year. When I find out what the first one is going to be for 2025, I will either decide I want it or skip it, and when they announce the second one, then that's when I will have to make my decision, I guess, because you know you can only skip one series, and it probably would be better to just cancel it. But I'll wait to know what the first series is, just in case it's like something that I'm super excited about getting. But the only reason I would be super excited about it would most likely be if I've already read it. And now I'm getting series that I haven't read yet, for which I'm like, yeah, but maybe I will really like it. And so I will get the special editions. But yeah, the subscription service model is actually a trap. This is my conclusion of this video so far, is that I should get off of my subscription services. I mean, I think for a Lumicrate it doesn't matter how many times you skip. So, and I think I got 2 so far this year, so I mean that's fine, I guess. I got some extra books that weren't part of the subscription, but I only got like 2 books that were actually part of the subscription this year so far. So as long as they don't tell me that I cannot skip as many times as I'm currently doing, it's fine for me to stay on there, I guess. So the Broken Binding one, I guess, is the big problem. And so if I would just like decide to unsubscribe from the fantasy one, that would already have a massive impact, and so the SFF one I can skip quite regularly as well. So yeah, I think that that would be the best plan, because currently I have 14 books on the TBR, as I said, and if I look at those statistics, I have a lot for which I have plans, and the ones for which I don't have any plans are the subscription ones. So that is a problem. That is a problem that needs to be tackled, because clearly when I find out about the subscription books, I'm not planning them into my reading life. They are just books that when they arrive, they add on to the physical load of my TBR, and when they've been on there too long, I read them, but clearly that means that I'm not as excited about them as I should be in order for me to be paying that type of money for that special edition. But so yes, as foreseen, this video has become very rambly. It lacks chaos. It lacks chaos, but it doesn't lack chaos. It lacks structure. I hope you got something out of it. Conclusion is, I do like my short TBR. I wouldn't mind my TBR getting smaller still. Ideally, I would like my TBR to be under 10, and the best way that we can do to tackle that would probably be to be even more strict on the special editions that I'm getting, and to potentially cancel some of those subscriptions to make that happen. But yeah, how about you guys? I know that some of you are also doing TBR reduction programs, kind of. Like, what are your thoughts about where you're going to take things after you reach that? And what are your big motivations for that? And for those of you who have the luxury of living without this annoying sort of like over contemplation of the amount of books in your TBR, tell us your ways, guys. Help us out. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!